the physicalist description of the world suggests that our experience of things occurs when the brain provides us with a mental representation of the physical data received by the senses. But unlike the neurologist or physicist, Whitehead places the phenomena of experience not only at the head of these sense-related interactions, but at the seat of every interaction. Thus why Whitehead's particular version of process philosophy is often considered another example of panpsychism. As he says, each actuality is essentially bipolar, physical and mental. These actualities are to be thought of as event-like processes, which he considered to be, quote, the final real things of which the world is made up, end quote. Self-organized, relational happenings, drops of experience, complex and independent, each guided by a particular subjective aim that culminates in a satisfaction of being. However, this subjective aim is not primarily intellectual, nor necessarily conscious. Instead, it is, as he says, the mere lure for feeling, the germ of mind, unique gradients of will that open up novel possibilities through a flux of creative freedoms. Depending on whether our description of these actualities require a spatial or temporal emphasis, they can either be called actual entities or actual occasions, but both refer to the same event-like entity. God is an actual entity, he says, and so is the most trivial puff of existence in far-off empty space. So you may be thinking, how are we supposed to superimpose this idea of actual entities onto the world we know? Well, firstly, we should try to understand his notion of the continuum and the process of concrescence, which is the act of tying one actual entity into its next. And then we shall see how these can unite as an ordered, self-sustained organism like you or me. Now again, these are not objects, but events, and as such, we can imagine how they could just as adequately be described as an uninterrupted continuum of flux, a web of relations, thick with the rich history of all past facts. But the point that Whitehead wants to elucidate is that these regions of facts can be considered both in terms of this becomingness of the continuum and also in a beingness specific to the goal intention of each entity. But it's only in respect of the pluralistic nature that we can discuss the activity of any particular actual entity. As an atomistic sea of relations, we can now speak of these actual entities in terms of their mereological relations, which ebb and flow in a coming and going of eternal influence, where the history of past facts gets passed on to each new generation, thus shaping that generation's private, subjective aim. And it's this process of interaction that he calls the concrescence, a point-free phasic process that doesn't happen in space or time, but rather results in space and time. And this is where we come back to you and I. Because we are not ourselves actual entities, but emergent processes. Like the emergence of time or space, can other equally complex processes emerge when a nexus of actual entities come together under a shared subjective aim, an ordered set called a society. And this is how Whitehead would describe us, a temporary identity that only endures due to the balance held between the collective's shared subjective aim and the character-defining qualities of our environment. But again, we are not the body, or even the subjectivity of our person. Rather, we as a society of event-like occasions are the historical root of that person from birth to death. Though it is in recognizing ourselves as a historically related series of events, rather than an ever-changing object, that we can now attach this same definition to more abstract entities, like the historical root of a language from its inception through to its loss, as both human and language are to be considered societies. This is why he states that the question as to whether to call an enduring object a transition of matter or of character is very much a verbal question as to where you draw the line between various properties. And it's in this same appreciation that a society can also be seen as part of a greater society, like its environment, such that an electron, as a society, is only a part of a greater set of electronic occasions, or a proton is a society of protonic occasions, which are equally parts of an electromagnetic society that's contained within a geometrical society, all that fall under the same cosmic epoch that we call the universe, with each society persisting for its own time until eventually falling into decay with the passing of its environment. The machinery of which is the intent towards satisfaction, where, as they move towards chaos, its intensity decreases. Or alternatively, as societies become more complex and structured, this same intensity is that which is increased, an act that requires a society to enhance its, quote, mental pole, being the mental side of the actuality's bipolar nature mentioned at the top. Quote, in this way, intensity is mated with survival, end quote. Each actual occasion is therefore shaped both by a mental and physical pole, with the act of the mental pole being twofold, where first, in order to survive, it will block any unwelcome or unnecessary detail, simplifying its world to a manageable stream of experience, and thus encouraging objectification. Hence, the objectification of the world would be, in essence, an act of abstraction, caused by the ignoring of banal information, what Whitehead calls negative prehensions. So like with our creature in the infinite desert, this would suggest that the reality we experience is not that which is interpreted by the brain, but filtered by it. An idea that has led many Whiteheadians to consider the possibility that we may have access to a depth of experience far greater than what we assume, and that it is these depths that we access during extreme mental states, like dream states, near death, the psychedelic experience, or meditation. But higher organisms don't only dismiss data into the negative, they also move towards the positive prehensions of original creativity. And indeed, it is this same move towards mental originality that manifests in us as life, and which ultimately gives rise to Whitehead's consequent nature of God. Though beyond the culmination of these mental actualities, did Whitehead also suggest a non-conscious side of God in his primordial nature, the realm of the unreachable, eternal objects that lie outside of space and time, like our perfect circle or Plato's forms?
If you enjoyed that and you would like to see the entire episode, it's live right at the moment, or you can head over to our homepage and have a look at the rest of the story that has unfolded across the last year. Otherwise, much love, and I hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful week. See ya.